I stood outside my old house, watching strangers carry boxes through the front door. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. This was where Zacchaeus took his first steps. Where we built blanket forts on rainy days. Beautiful house, right? I turned to see Catherine walking toward my car. My former best friend smiled like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't destroyed my entire life. Richard got such a good deal, she continued. Lucky him. Richard. My ex-husband. The man who stole everything from me. Where's little Zacchaeus these days? Catherine asked sweetly. My throat felt tight. He's with his father. That's probably for the best. Children need stable homes, don't they? I watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the sidewalk. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. My phone buzzed with a text message. Everything is ready. Phase 1 is complete. 3 years. 3 long years of planning. 3 years of letting them think they had won. But the game wasn't over yet. It was just beginning. I started my car and drove away from my old life. Tonight, I would begin taking back everything they stole from me. 3 years ago asterisk. Roseline, we need to talk. Richard stood in our kitchen, still wearing his expensive lawyer suit. His face looked serious, but I thought he was stressed about work. What's wrong, honey? I asked, setting down Zacchaeus' school bag. I want a divorce. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. We had been married for 7 years. Sure, things weren't perfect, but I never saw this coming. Richard, what are you talking about? Is this about money? I know my library job doesn't pay much, but it's not about money. His voice was cold and different. I've been thinking about this for months. We're not happy anymore. But what about Zacchaeus? He's only 8 years old. Zacchaeus will be fine. Actually, I think he should live with me full-time. My heart stopped beating. What do you mean? I make more money. I can provide a better home. It's what's best for him. You can't be serious. I'm his mother. Richard's eyes turned dark and mean. We'll see about that in court. Something in his voice scared me. This wasn't the man I married. This was someone completely different. Who is she? I whispered. He didn't answer, but I already knew the truth. The legal papers arrived 1 week later. I read them while shaking hands in my small apartment. Richard had made me move out while we figured things out, but he had already decided everything. The custody request was horrible. Richard wanted full custody of Zacchaeus. He claimed I was mentally unstable and couldn't handle money. This is crazy, I told my lawyer, Mr. Peterson. I've never hurt Zacchaeus. I work hard and pay my bills on time. Mrs. Roseline, your husband has powerful friends in this town. He's also saying you drink too much alcohol. That's a complete lie. I believe you, but proving he's lying will be very hard. He has people who will say they saw you drinking. What people? Mr. Peterson showed me a list of names. Catherine Miller was at the top. My best friend since college. The woman who knew all my secrets. Zacchaeus' godmother. She's lying, I said quietly. Can you prove that? I couldn't. Catherine was smart. She had been Richard's friend first, back in law school. I should have seen the signs. There's more bad news, Mr. Peterson said gently. He's saying you stole money from the library. The room started spinning. What? Some money went missing from the children's program. Money you were supposed to watch. I felt sick. Richard had planned this perfectly. He knew exactly how to destroy me. The courtroom was full of Richard's supporters. His lawyer friends, Catherine, and even neighbors I thought cared about me. Judge Morrison looked tired as he read through our case files. He was an old man, close to retirement. Richard had chosen his judge very carefully. Your Honor, Richard's lawyer began. My client just wants to protect his son from a dangerous situation. I watched Richard sit there in his perfect suit, looking like the world's best father. He had even brought photos of Zacchaeus' new bedroom. It looked like a toy store. Mrs. Roseline has shown a pattern of bad behavior, the lawyer continued. Drinking alcohol, money problems, angry outbursts. That's not true. I stood up, but Mr. Peterson pulled me back down. Mrs. Roseline, Judge Morrison said sternly, you will have your turn to speak. But when my turn came, Catherine walked to the witness stand. Roseline was my best friend, she said with fake tears in her eyes. I wanted to help her, but she was drinking every single day. She would call me crying, saying she couldn't handle being a mother anymore. Every word felt like a knife in my heart. Some things were twisted truths, others were complete lies. I saw her take money from the library safe, Catherine continued. She said it was just borrowing, but she never paid it back. I watched Judge Morrison's face change. He was believing every word she said. The trial was over before it really began. After careful thought, Judge Morrison announced, "I give full custody to Mr. Richard Hartman." The words echoed in my ears like thunder. I felt like I was drowning in deep water. Mrs. Roseline will have supervised visits every other Saturday for 4 hours only. 4 hours. Every 2 weeks. With a stranger watching everything I did with my own son. Also, Mrs. Roseline must complete alcohol treatment and anger management classes before she can have unsupervised visits. I hadn't touched alcohol in months, but nobody cared about the truth anymore. Richard smiled and shook hands with his lawyer. Catherine hugged him like they had won the lottery. "Mama?" Zacchaeus ran to me from the back of the courtroom, where Richard's mother had been watching him. "Hey, baby." I knelt down and hugged him as tight as I could. "Am I coming home with you today?" I looked into his innocent 8-year-old eyes and felt my heart break into a million pieces. "Not today, sweetheart. You're going to stay with Daddy for a while. But I want to stay with you, Mama." "I know, baby. I know." Richard walked over and put his hand on Zacchaeus' shoulder. "Come on, son. Let's go home." As I watched them leave together, Catherine walked up to me. "I'm sorry it had to happen this way," she said quietly. I really looked at her for the first time. "No, you're not sorry at all." She didn't even try to deny it. My apartment felt like a tomb. Everything reminded me of Zacchaeus, his drawings on the refrigerator, his favorite cup, the book we were reading together. The library fired me the next day. "We can't have someone who steals money working with children," the director explained. I spent weeks looking for jobs, but word travels fast in small towns. Richard had made sure everyone knew about the crazy woman who stole from children. My savings disappeared quickly. Lawyer fees, rent, and the classes the judge ordered. Everything cost money I didn't have. "You need to move out," my landlord said one evening. "I'm sorry, Roseline, but I can't rent to someone with your problems." "What problems?" "People talk. It's bad for my business." I packed my few things and moved to a tiny studio apartment across town. The neighborhood was rough, but it was all I could afford. On Saturday, I went to see Zacchaeus at the supervised visit center. A social worker named Mrs. Chin watched us play board games in a cold, empty room. "Why can't I come home with you, Mama?" Zacchaeus asked. "Soon, baby. Mama's working on it." But I wasn't working on anything. I was drowning in sadness and had no idea how to swim back up. 6 months after the divorce, my phone rang at midnight. "Hello, Roseline." The voice was drunk and crying. "Catherine, I need to tell you something important." She was definitely drunk. "What do you want?" "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did." My heart started beating fast. "Sorry for what exactly?" "The trial. The lies. Richard made me do it." I sat up in bed. "What do you mean he made you?" "He said if I didn't help him, he would destroy my real estate business. He had information about my taxes that could have sent me to jail." "So you decided to destroy my life instead?" "I didn't know he would take Zacchaeus away completely. I thought you would get to see him half the time. You said I was drinking. You said I stole money." Catherine was crying hard now. The money thing was sort of true, but not the way we made it sound. "You borrowed $50 from petty cash for Zacchaeus' school trip. You paid it back the same week. And the drinking? You had 2 glasses of wine at my birthday party 6 months ago. That's the only time I ever saw you drink anything." I held the phone tight. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I can't live with myself anymore. And because Richard dumped me last week." There it was. The real reason she was calling. "You were sleeping with my husband." "Yes." We sat in silence for a long time. "Catherine?" "Yeah, don't ever call me again." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I felt something other than sadness. I felt angry. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made lists. Everything Richard had taken from me. My son, my house, my job, my reputation, my friends, my peace of mind. Everything he had used against me. His money and connections. Catherine's lies. My trust and love. A corrupt system. By morning, I had a plan. Not for revenge, that was too simple and wouldn't bring Zacchaeus back. I wanted justice. I called Mr. Peterson, but he couldn't help. Even if Catherine admits she lied, it would be her word against the court record. Richard's too powerful now. Richard had been promoted to senior partner at his law firm. He was dating the mayor's daughter. He lived in my dream house with my son. But powerful people have weaknesses. They get sloppy when they think they've won. I started small. I got a job cleaning offices downtown at night, including Richard's law firm. Perfect timing, the supervisor said. We just lost our previous cleaner. She got too curious about paperwork, if you know what I mean. I smiled innocently. I'm only interested in doing good work. For 2 months, I scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans. I learned the building layout, the security system, and everyone's schedules. Most importantly, I learned about Richard's clients and cases. And I started finding very interesting things in the garbage. Richard was careless with important papers. He left client files open on his desk and threw away important documents without shredding them properly. I started keeping copies of anything interesting. Not stealing, just documenting what I found. His client list was impressive. The mayor, several city council members, the police chief, and 3 judges, including Judge Morrison. I also found something else in his trash, personal notes between him and Catherine. Kat, thanks for your help with the Roseline situation. Once this mess is over, we can be public about our relationship. The partnership vote is next month, and I can't have any scandals. **. The note was dated 2 weeks before he asked for divorce. They had been planning to destroy me for months, maybe years. I made copies of everything and stored them in a safety deposit box across town. During my Saturday visits with Zacchaeus, I listened carefully to his stories about Daddy's house. Miss Catherine comes over a lot, he said one day. She sleeps in Daddy's room sometimes. How do you feel about that, sweetie? I don't like her. She's mean when Daddy's not looking. My heart broke, but I kept my voice calm. Mean how? She tells me I can't talk about you at home. She says it makes Daddy sad. I wrote down everything Zacchaeus told me. Not to use my child as a weapon, but to understand what he was going through. Mrs. Chin, the social worker, started noticing changes in Zacchaeus's behavior too. He seems worried during our visits, she mentioned. Has something changed at home? You'd have to ask his father about that. But I filed away her observations as well. Cleaning offices gave me access to more than just Richard's law firm. I worked in 3 different buildings downtown, including City Hall. Late at night, important people throw away amazing things. I found records of contracts going to Richard's clients without proper bidding. Evidence of the mayor approving building projects that helped Richard's law firm make money. Email printouts showing Judge Morrison taking expensive golf trips paid for by people who appeared in his courtroom. It was a whole network of corruption, with Richard right in the center. But I needed more than just documents. I needed real people who would tell the truth. I started volunteering at the community center, helping adults learn to read. It put me in contact with people from all parts of town. I know Richard Hartman, said Maria, who cleaned houses for a living. I used to clean his apartment before he got married. He had some wild parties back then. What kind of wild? I asked casually. Let's just say his image as a perfect family man is brand new. Maria introduced me to other cleaning ladies and maintenance workers. People who were invisible to men like Richard but saw everything. I learned about his drinking problem in college, his gambling debts that his father had to pay, and his pattern of using women and then throwing them away. Most importantly, I learned that he still owed money to some very dangerous people. 1 year after the divorce, I found the proof I needed. Richard's trash contained bank statements showing large cash deposits, much larger than his lawyer's salary could explain. The dates matched perfectly with court cases where his clients had received surprisingly good results. He wasn't just corrupt. He was buying judges with cash. I researched every case, comparing the deposit dates with court decisions. The pattern was crystal clear. But I still needed proof of the actual money changing hands. That's when I remembered the previous cleaning lady who got fired for being too curious. I found her working at a diner across town. Her name was Elena, and she was still angry about being fired. They fired me for asking questions about money lying around, she said. Cash envelopes with judges' names written on them. I thought maybe it was bonuses or something, but when I asked about it, they panicked. Do you remember which judges? Elena pulled out her phone. I took pictures before they fired me. You know, for insurance. The photos showed envelopes marked with initials. JM for Judge Morrison, JK for Judge Kelly, JR for Judge Rodriguez. Each envelope was stuffed with thousands of dollars in cash. I'll testify in court if you need me to, Elena said. They destroyed my reputation too. Finally, I had what I needed. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. 2 years after losing everything, I was ready to fight back. I had gathered evidence of corruption involving half the city government. I had witnesses ready to testify. I had documentation proving Richard's lies during our divorce. But I needed more than evidence. I needed a way to reach people. I started writing a blog called Small Town Truth. I wrote about corruption in general terms, never naming specific names yet. Slowly, people started reading. Citizens who felt powerless against crooked politicians. Other victims of corrupt officials. The blog gained followers hundreds, then thousands. I also started attending city council meetings, asking innocent questions about contracts and city spending. Mrs. Roseline, the mayor said after one meeting, "You seem very interested in city business lately." "I'm just a concerned citizen." He smiled, but his eyes were cold. "Be careful. Concerned citizens sometimes get themselves in trouble around here." The threat was clear, but I wasn't the same broken woman from 2 years ago. I had spent months taking self-defense classes, learning about law and journalism, building my strength in every possible way. Most importantly, I had been documenting my journey back from rock bottom. The contrast between the woman who lost her son and the woman who was fighting back would be powerful evidence in court. Richard got engaged to Sandra Morrison, Judge Morrison's daughter. The engagement announcement was in the newspaper, complete with photos of Richard, Sandra, and Zacchaeus at some charity event. My son looked uncomfortable in his little suit, standing between his father and the woman who would become his stepmother. I used my visitation time very carefully now. "How do you feel about Daddy getting married again?" I asked Zacchaeus during one of our supervised visits. "I guess it's okay. Sandra's nice enough, but she's not you, Mama. It's completely okay to have feelings about big changes like this, baby. Change is always hard. Will you ever get to come home, Mama?" The question broke my heart, but it also made my determination stronger. "I'm working very hard on it, sweetheart. I promise you that." Mrs. Chin was taking notes about our conversation. She had been documenting Zacchaeus' emotional state for months, and her reports were getting more and more concerning. The boy was showing clear signs of anxiety and sadness. He was having nightmares and doing poorly in school. "Perhaps it's time to reconsider the custody arrangement," Mrs. Chin suggested to me privately. "The child is clearly struggling with the current situation. What would you recommend? More time with you? Visits without supervision? Maybe even a change in who he lives with primarily? Would you support that recommendation officially?" Based on my observations over the past year, absolutely yes. But it would require new court proceedings. I thanked her and filed her recommendation away with all my other evidence. The trap was almost ready to spring. Richard and Sandra's wedding was the biggest social event of the year in our small town. I watched from across the street as guests arrived at the courthouse, with Judge Morrison performing the ceremony, naturally. Zacchaeus was Richard's best man, wearing a tiny tuxedo that made him look like a miniature adult. Catherine was there as Sandra's maid of honor, wearing a fake smile and an expensive dress. The whole corrupt network was there, celebrating their golden boy's perfect new life. After the ceremony, they moved to the country club for the reception. I didn't attend, but I had sources there. Elena was working as part of the catering staff. Richard gave a speech thanking everyone for their support during his difficult divorce, Elena reported to me later. He said he was grateful to have found true love after dealing with his unstable ex-wife. The guests laughed and clapped. He also announced that he's planning to run for district attorney next year. District attorney. The position that would give him even more power to dust of justice. How corruption stole my son, asterisk. I told my complete story, the divorce, the lies, all the evidence I had gathered over 2 long years. I named names. I showed documents. I provided undeniable proof. Within hours, the post had thousands of shares across social media. By morning, my phone was ringing constantly. Roseline Hartman? The voice was professional and female. Yes, this is Jessica Martinez from Channel 7 News. We would like to interview you about your blog post. 3 other news stations called that same morning. The story was spreading faster than I had ever expected. But I knew Richard would fight back quickly and viciously. I had prepared for that too. When my phone rang at 2 p.m., I wasn't surprised to see Richard's number. You crazy woman, his voice was shaking with pure rage. What do you think you're doing? I'm telling the truth. You're going to destroy yourself all over again. Maybe, but I'm taking you down with me this time. You have no real proof of anything. Check your email right now. I had sent him copies of the bank statements, the photos Elena took, and the documented pattern of bribes. The phone line went completely quiet. Where did you get these documents? It doesn't matter where I got them. What matters is that everyone's going to see them. If you publish those, I'll see you for everything you have left. What do I have left to lose, Richard? You already took everything that mattered. I'll make sure you never see Zacchaeus again. Actually, you won't be able to do that. The Channel 7 interview aired that evening during prime time. Jessica Martinez was thorough and fair, giving me a real chance to present all my evidence clearly. Mrs. Hartman, these are very serious accusations. How do you respond to people who might say you're just a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge? I'd say look at the evidence with your own eyes. Numbers don't lie. Dates don't lie. Bank records don't lie. You're alleging that your ex-husband bribed Judge Morrison, the same judge who ruled against you in your divorce case. I'm showing a clear pattern of behavior. In the 2 years since my divorce, Judge Morrison has ruled in favor of Richard's clients in 95% of their cases. That's statistically impossible unless something else is happening behind the scenes. What do you hope to accomplish by making these revelations public? I want my son back, of course. But more than that, I want justice for everyone this corrupt system has failed. The interview included segments with Elena and other witnesses I had found. It also included Mrs. Chin discussing Zacchaeus's deteriorating emotional state. The child clearly misses his mother desperately and is struggling significantly with the current living arrangement, she said on camera. The story exploded across social media platforms. Justice for Roseline started trending nationally. Other victims of the corrupt system started coming forward with their own similar stories. Richard's law firm released a statement denying all allegations and threatening legal action against me. But the damage was already spreading like wildfire. Within 1 week, the state attorney general announced a formal investigation into corruption in our county. FBI agents interviewed me for 6 straight hours, going through every single piece of evidence I had collected. Mrs. Hartman, this is truly impressive investigative work, Agent Collins said. Have you ever considered a career in law enforcement? I just want my son back home with me. Well, you may get that wish and much more. This evidence could bring down an entire criminal network. Richard was immediately suspended from his law firm pending the federal investigation. Judge Morrison removed himself from all current cases. The mayor held a press conference calling for calm while denying any wrongdoing. But the investigation was just getting started. Elena agreed to testify in exchange for complete immunity from prosecution. Maria and other service workers came forward with their own stories of corruption and abuse of power. Most importantly, other ex-wives and former girlfriends of Richard's powerful friends started speaking out publicly. We weren't alone anymore. The system had been failing innocent people for years. Richard tried to control the story by giving his own interview. My ex-wife is clearly mentally unstable, he told the cameras. She's making wild accusations because she can't accept that she lost custody of our son for completely legitimate reasons. But his confident facade was starting to crack under pressure. When the reporter asked directly about the bank statements, Richard's lawyer immediately cut the interview short. 6 months after my blog post changed everything, Judge Rodriguez, one of the few honest judges in the county, agreed to hear a motion to change Zacchaeus' custody arrangement. The courtroom was packed with reporters and my supporters. Richard sat with a whole new team of expensive lawyers from the state capitol. He looked older and thinner. The stress was clearly showing on his face. Catherine wasn't there. She had moved to another state after her real estate business collapsed when her connection to the scandal became public. Your Honor, my new lawyer began, we have substantial evidence that the original custody decision was based on lies under oath and judicial corruption. We presented everything: Elena's photographs, the bank records, Mrs. Chen's detailed reports on Zacchaeus' declining mental health. Furthermore, my lawyer continued, Mrs. Hartman has completed all court-ordered programs and has completely rebuilt her life despite facing systematic harassment and persecution. It was true. I had finished the alcohol and anger management classes, even though I had never needed them in the first place. I had found stable employment as a freelance investigative journalist. Most importantly, I had proven that I was fighting not just for myself, but for justice for everyone. When it came time for Zacchaeus to speak to the judge privately, I felt my heart racing with anxiety. 10-year-old children rarely get much say in custody decisions, but Judge Rodriguez wanted to hear directly from him. After 20 long minutes, they returned to the courtroom. Zacchaeus looked directly at me and smiled, the first real, genuine smile I had seen from him in 3 years. After reviewing all evidence and testimony presented, Judge Rodriguez began, I find substantial grounds to modify the existing custody arrangement. My heart completely stopped beating. The evidence clearly suggests that the original decision was influenced by perjured testimony and potentially corrupt judicial practices. Richard's face went completely white. Furthermore, the child's emotional well-being appears to have deteriorated significantly under the current arrangement. Therefore, I hereby award primary physical custody to Mrs. Roseline Hartman, with reasonable visitation rights to Mr. Richard Hartman. The courtroom erupted in cheers and applause. Reporters rushed out to file their breaking news stories. My supporters cheered and cried tears of joy. Richard's lawyers immediately announced plans to appeal the decision. But none of that mattered in that perfect moment. Zacchaeus ran straight to me, and I held him tight for the first time in 3 years without a social worker watching our every move. I get to come home with you now, Mama? Yes, baby. We're finally going home together. As we left the courthouse together, reporters shouted questions at us. Mrs. Hartman, how does it feel to get your son back? What's next for your corruption investigation? Do you have a message for other victims of corrupt systems? I stopped on the courthouse steps, with Zacchaeus holding my hand tightly. This was never about revenge, I said clearly. It was always about justice. And it's about never, ever giving up on the people you love. The federal criminal trials began 6 months later. Judge Morrison was convicted of accepting bribes and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. The mayor pled guilty to multiple corruption charges in exchange for a lighter sentence. 3 city council members were indicted on various charges. Richard's trial was by far the biggest and most publicized. He faced serious charges of bribery, conspiracy, and lying under oath. I testified for 2 full days, walking the jury step by step through all the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. Why didn't you come forward with this information sooner? The federal prosecutor asked me. Because the entire system was rigged against people like me. I had to build my own case, piece by piece, until the evidence was completely undeniable. Richard's defense team tried desperately to paint me as an obsessed ex-wife seeking revenge, but the evidence was simply overwhelming. When the jury delivered their guilty verdict on all counts, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. True peace. Richard was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. His law license was permanently revoked. His assets were frozen to pay restitution to all his victims. The house, my original house, was sold to pay his massive legal fees. I bought it back for a fraction of what Richard had originally paid. Zacchaeus and I moved back home where we belonged. 2 years after getting Zacchaeus back, our life had found a wonderful new rhythm. He was seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of our long separation, but he was healing beautifully. His grades improved dramatically. His nightmares finally stopped. His genuine smile came back permanently. "Mama," he said one evening while we were making dinner together in our old kitchen, "I'm really proud of you." "Proud of me for what, sweetheart?" "For never giving up on me. For fighting so hard to get me back home." I hugged him as tight as I could. "I will always fight for you, baby. Always and forever." I had written a book about our entire experience, Patience and Justice, A Mother's Fight Against Corruption. It became a national bestseller, with all proceeds going to legal aid organizations that help families navigate corrupt systems. I also started a nonprofit organization called Second Chances that provides resources and support for people fighting unjust custody decisions. Catherine reached out once through email, asking for forgiveness. I didn't respond to her message. Some wounds can heal with time, but some people don't deserve the energy it takes to hate them. Richard sent multiple letters from prison. First angry and threatening, then pleading and desperate, finally apologetic and remorseful. I kept them all as evidence of his true character, but I never replied to any of them. The best revenge wasn't destroying him completely. It was building a life so full of purpose and joy that his past actions became completely irrelevant. 5 years after my blog post changed everything, I was invited to speak at a national conference for family lawyers. The Hartman case fundamentally changed how we think about custody disputes, the moderator said. What advice do you have for attorneys representing clients in similar situations? Listen to your clients carefully. Really listen with your heart. And remember that the truth always has a way of surfacing if you're patient enough to wait for it. In the audience, I spotted several people I recognized, other parents who had been wrongfully separated from their children by corrupt systems. Many of them had won their own battles, directly inspired by our story. That's what mattered most to me. Not that Richard was sitting in prison. Not that the corrupt network had been completely dismantled. But the other innocent families had been reunited. Other children were back home with the parents who truly loved them. After my speech, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Hartman, I'm Linda Chen. Mrs. Chen's daughter." I remembered immediately, the social worker who had documented Zacchaeus' struggles so carefully. "Your mother was absolutely instrumental in our case. She always said you were the strongest person she had ever met. She retired last year, but she still talks about your family reunion constantly." "How is she doing in retirement?" "She's very happy. She says watching your reunion with Zacchaeus reminded her exactly why she became a social worker in the first place." That evening, I called Zacchaeus at college. He was studying journalism, directly inspired by my investigation work. "How was the conference, Mom?" "It was wonderful. I met Mrs. Chen's daughter there." "Oh, that's really cool. Hey, I'm writing a research paper about ethics in journalism. Can I interview you for it?" "Of course you can. What's your main thesis?" "That patience and truth are infinitely more powerful than anger and lies." I smiled with pure pride. "I think you're going to be an absolutely amazing journalist." 10 years after Richard first said he wanted a divorce, I stood in our kitchen, the same kitchen where my entire world had collapsed. But everything was completely different now. Zacchaeus was home from college for Christmas holidays, carefully following his grandmother's recipe for sugar cookies. The house was full of warmth, laughter, and genuine love. Real friends filled our living room, people who had stood by us through absolutely everything. Elena was there with her whole family. She had used her testimony settlement money to open her own successful cleaning business. Mrs. Chen had come for dinner, finally meeting Zacchaeus as a confident young man instead of a troubled child. Even Mr. Peterson, my original lawyer, had joined us. He had referred dozens of clients to me over the years. "Do you remember when you first came to my office?" he asked me. "You were so completely broken, so scared of everything. I remember feeling like my entire world had ended forever. And look at you now. You single-handedly changed an entire corrupt system. As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, Zacchaeus and I sat on the front porch where we used to share ice cream on summer nights. Mom, can I ask you something important? Always, sweetheart. Do you ever regret it? All those years it took to get me back? All the pain you went through? I looked at my son. Now taller than me, wise beyond his years, planning to use his journalism degree to fight for justice, just like his mother. Zacchaeus, those difficult years taught me something incredibly important. Real patience isn't passive. It's not just sitting around waiting for things to get better. What is it then? Patience is actively building the exact future you want, one careful piece at a time, even when absolutely no one believes it's possible. What is it then? Patience is actively building the exact future you want, one careful piece at a time, even when absolutely no one believes it's possible. I thought about Richard, now working in the prison library, hopefully learning something valuable about the innocent lives he had destroyed. I thought about Catherine, who had sent a Christmas card that I hadn't bothered to open. I thought about all the people who had counted us out completely, who had assumed that a broken woman with no money and no power could never fight back successfully. You know what the very best part is? I told Zacchaeus. What's that, Mom? They thought they had broken me forever. But they just taught me exactly how strong I really was. Zacchaeus smiled and leaned against my shoulder like he used to when he was little. I'm so glad you're my mom. And I'm so glad you're my son. As we sat there in comfortable silence, I realized something profound. Richard had taken my son, my home, and my peace. But he had never taken my patience. And in the end, that's exactly what won.